The night shift at the Virion 6 communications array was supposed to be quiet, silent even. Most engineers avoided it because staring at empty star maps for hours drained the spirit. To Lyra Vesh, though, the night was when the universe whispered secrets. She leaned back in her console chair, rotating a stylus between her fingers while monitoring the steady, predictable pulses of the colony's orbital network. Everything looked normal. Everything sounded normal. Yet something in the air felt wrong, like the hush before a predator leaps. A tremor flickered across the holographic projection. At first she dismissed it as drift interference. Then another pulse hit, stronger, sharper, unmistakably artificial. Lyra straightened. "Array, isolate anomaly," she commanded. The system complied. Blue rings spiraled outward, triangulating the disturbance. Her heart began to thud. The signature was faint but familiar in the worst way. She leaned closer, eyes narrowing. "Please tell me that's not what I think it is." The system mapped the signature onto her display. Massive gravitational wakes. Heavy engine clusters. Coordinated formation. Crack's Dominion warships. She paled. No, no, no. She zoomed out, hoping the readings were misaligned. They weren't. The distortion pattern was large, far larger than a patrol group. A fleet. Her hands hovered over the console. She forced herself to breathe. Staying calm didn't feel natural, but panic would only sabotage the colony's last chance at survival. She tapped into the Concord network. "Central Command, this is Lyra Vesh at the Virion Communications Array. I'm detecting incoming crack signatures, heavy-class vessels. Request immediate confirmation." The line crackled. Either the signal lagged or the Concord was equally unprepared. "Repeat, Virion Array. Did you say heavy-class cracks vessels?" An officer responded, voice strained. "Yes," she answered steadily. "Multiple. Based on engine density, I estimate at least 20, possibly more." He swore under his breath. "We have no fleet available for deployment. Hold position, continue monitoring." "That's not enough," she insisted. "We need evacuation, defense, something." But the line went dead. She knew what that meant. Virion 6 had been left to fate. Outside the array's glass dome, the world slept unaware. Forests stretched under the violet moon, and the colony's settlement lights glowed gently in the valley. Lyra pressed a hand to the cold glass. "They have no idea." She rushed out of the array room into the corridor, almost colliding with Elder Tovin, her mentor. The elderly Siroi scholar steadied himself with his cane, eyes narrowing as he studied her expression. "What happened?" "Crack's fleet inbound." She didn't soften the truth. "Big one." His tendrils tightened in alarm. "The Concord?" "Nothing. They can't help." Fear flickered across his face, but he swallowed it. "Then our world is finished." Lyra shook her head. "Maybe not." Tovin's gaze sharpened. "Child, do not say it. Do not even think it." She already had. The idea burned in her mind like a forbidden flame. "The relay," she whispered. "The old beacon. It still exists. And it still works." Tovin gripped her shoulders. "We buried that device for a reason. That signal was meant for a species we do not understand. A species we all agreed to avoid. They're the only ones who might listen," she argued. "The cracks won't negotiate. We need help." "From Deathworlders?" He looked at her as if she'd gone mad. "Do you truly want them to return to the galaxy? After what they became?" Lyra hesitated. Stories of humanity's final war haunted every academy lecture. Earth had sealed itself off afterward. No communication. No diplomats. No intervention. Only silence. Still, the alternative was extinction. "If we do nothing," she said quietly, "Virion 6 will be ashes." He closed his eyes. Weariness settled over him. When he spoke again, his voice had softened. "The decision isn't just yours. But I know you well enough to realize you've already made it." She nodded. Tovin gave her a final, mournful look. Then go. And may the stars protect us from whoever answers. She sprinted out of the building into the chilled night air. The wind whipped at her coat as she dashed toward the ridge where the old beacon bunker lay sealed beneath stone and moss. The structure had been abandoned for over a century, a relic from Earth's last contact with the Concorde. Most citizens didn't even know it existed. She reached the entrance, an ancient metallic hatch covered in vines. She brushed off the foliage, revealing a faded emblem, a stylized blue sphere with branching lines. Earth's old crest. A chill crawled down her spine. She activated the manual release. The hatch groaned open, dust misting the air. She slipped inside and descended the narrow stairwell until she reached the core chamber. The beacon rested at the center, a massive ring of dormant conduits, faintly lit by emergency energy cells. Time had scarred it, but its presence felt oppressive, almost sentient. As if it remembered every cry for help it had ever sent. She approached the console and wiped the dust away. Lines of ancient Terran script pulsed weakly on the screen. The translation flickered. Emergency relay, Terran United Response Network. Status, standby. Protocol 01, SOS priority. Warning, activation guarantees response. Use only in extinction-level events. Her hands trembled. Extinction level? She murmured bitterly. That qualifies. She opened the input field. Her throat tightened. This is Lyra Vesh of Virion 6, she said, voice cracking despite her effort to remain composed. Our colony is under imminent Krax invasion. Population, 1.2 million. We require immediate aid. No reply. The beacon simply awaited confirmation. She closed her eyes, thumb hovering above the activation pad. Please, she whispered. Don't let this be in vain. She pressed the pad. The beacon roared to life. Energy surged through the conduits, shaking dust from the walls. A beam of white light shot upward, detonating into subspace with a thunderous pulse. The entire bunker vibrated as if some ancient beast had been awakened. Then all fell silent. The beacon dimmed, returning to its dormant state. Lyra stared at it, heart pounding. Did it reach anyone? She asked aloud, her voice echoing off the chamber walls. No answer. Outside, the ground rumbled, this time not from the beacon, but from Krax dropships descending through the clouds. Their engines wailed like metallic predators. The invasion had begun. Lyra stepped out of the bunker and looked toward the sky. Fire streaked downward, illuminating the valley in harsh red light. She felt smaller than she had ever felt in her life. I hope I didn't just doom us, she whispered. Behind her, the beacon's final pulse faded into the cosmos. Whether someone heard it, or something, remained unknown. But something was already moving in the darkness between stars. And it had listened. The Krax landed with the force of a thunderclap. Lyra watched from behind a shattered storage unit as the first dropships slammed into the soil, kicking up spirals of dust and flame. Their hulls glowed molten at the edges from atmospheric entry, the metal ridged and cruel like the exoskeletons of the warriors inside. Hatches unfolded with mechanical precision, revealing silhouettes armed with shock carbines and serrated gauntlets. Terrified colonists were herded into the square at gunpoint. Children clung to parents, elders trembled, and the untrained militia tried, and failed, to mount a defense. 3 shots, 3 bodies, and the militia threw down their weapons. The Krax commander marched forward, towering above everyone. His armor was obsidian black with angular crimson markings, a sign of high rank. His voice boomed across the square, amplified through a translator that distorted every word into cold brutality. I am Warlord Drazk Vorkun. This world now belongs to the Dominion. Resist and you die. Submit, and perhaps some of you will live long enough to be useful. Gasps rippled through the crowd. Lyra ducked lower. She had seen holoclips of Krax warlords, but seeing one in person was a different nightmare. His presence swallowed hope itself. Soldiers fanned out, scanning for threats. A pair spotted her. She tried to slip into the alley, but fists grabbed her arms and dragged her toward the square. Unregistered engineer. One growled. I'm just a technician, she said, breath shaking. I was off duty. Vorkuen's shadow loomed over her as they pushed her to her knees. His reptilian eyes narrowed. You were seen near an old structure before we arrived, he said. Explain. Her stomach tightened. They must have detected the beacon's activation pulse. She forced her voice steady. It's a sealed bunker. Abandoned. Nothing inside but rust. He crouched, bringing his face inches from hers. A lie? She held his gaze. Search it. You'll find dust and nothing more. Vorkuen studied her carefully. Then he stood and motioned to his warriors. If she lies, kill her slow. They hauled her to the holding zone, binding her hands with a restraint cable and forcing her into a fenced enclosure with dozens of frightened civilians. Lyra slid to the ground, heart pounding. If the beacon worked, something was coming. If it didn't, this might be her last night alive. Hours crawled by. The cracks set up artillery arrays and converted the mayor's office into a command center. They moved with frightening efficiency, stripping the colony of resources while preparing for further conquest. Lyra watched their every move, analyzing weak spots, escape routes, anything that might matter. Suddenly the ground trembled again, but this time, it wasn't Crack's machinery. A faint shiver ran through the air, like the atmosphere had forgotten how to breathe. Lights flickered. Crack's detectors chirped in confused rhythms. A technician warrior barked. Grav flux readings unstable. Vorkuen snapped around. Cause? Unknown. Not natural. Lyra's pulse spiked. She recognized the anomaly instantly. The beacon hadn't called emptiness. Something was arriving. The sky dimmed as if a colossal shadow passed across the sun. The air thrummed with subspace distortion so strong even the cracks staggered. Their ships lifted weapons toward the heavens, scanning for threats. Then space tore open. A rift split the sky, shimmering with an impossible blend of blue and white. Vessels emerged, sleek, angular, matte black, their hulls absorbing rather than reflecting light. They moved without sound, without hesitation, without any of the bulky inefficiency of Dominion warcraft. The Terran United Fleet had arrived. Someone screamed. Someone else fainted. Even the cracks recoiled. A clear transmission flooded every channel. Virion 6, this is Admiral Naomi Reyes of the Terran United Fleet. SOS received. Assistance inbound. Lyra's throat closed. They came. After a century of silence, they answered. Vorkuen slammed a clawed fist into the ground. Deathworlders, he hissed. Impossible. His troops scrambled to battle stations. Crack's dreadnoughts in orbit pivoted their cannons toward the newcomers, but they were already too late. Terran ships deployed a wave of kinetic lances. No flash. No explosion. Just surgical annihilation. In seconds, 3 Dominion cruisers devolved into drifting shards. No wasted energy. No prolonged engagement. Just elegant termination. The colony shook as shockwaves rippled through the upper atmosphere. 2 Crack's officers panicked. Warlord, advise retreat! Their weapons! Hold! Vorkuen roared. We are Dominion! Deathworlders bleed like any other! The assertion sounded hollow even to his own soldiers. More Terran ships folded into orbit. Their formation was immaculate, perfectly aligned, each movement calculated through silent coordination. They descended in controlled layers, surrounding the Crack's ships with predatory ease. Then, streaking from the Terran carrier, came the drop pods. They pierced the atmosphere like spears, engines flaring only moments before impact. The first pod slammed into the outskirts with bone-shaking force. Hinges burst, and 2 armored humans stepped out, armor dark and smooth, eyes concealed behind mirrored visors. Their rifles hummed with restrained power. The Cracks opened fire. The humans moved like fluid shadows. One Marine sidestepped a plasma bolt and countered with a single shot. The Crack's attacker collapsed instantly, armor caving inward. The second Marine raised a wrist module. Civilian cage located. Moving. Lyra barely had time to understand before they reached the enclosure. One soldier cut the lock with a focus beam, and the gate swung open. You injured? Anyone needing immediate evacuation? The Marine asked, voice calm, steady, human. We're fine, Lyra stammered. How did you? No time, he said. Stay close. Keep your head down. The civilians followed the soldiers in stunned silence. Panic had been replaced by a surreal, trembling awe. Behind them, Crack's forces collapsed under the relentless advance of Terran units. Every Terran shot landed. Every movement served a purpose. There was no chaos, only controlled domination. But Vorkuin wasn't finished. He charged toward the fleeing civilians, roaring in fury. His massive frame tore through debris, determined to reclaim command through brute terror. Lyra stumbled backward as he closed in. The first Marine stepped between them. Vorkuin snarled. You dare stand alone? The Marine's visor tilted. Alone? Dozens of targeting lasers appeared across Vorkuin's armor, silent red dots from every rooftop and ridge. The Marine didn't raise his voice. You picked the wrong world. Terran rifles fired in perfect unison. Vorkuin collapsed, armor shattered, roar silenced. Lyra exhaled shakily, unable to look away. The Marine turned to her. You're Lyra Vesh? Her heart stopped. How do you know my name? The beacon transmitted your signature, he said. Admiral Reyes wants to speak with you. Lyra felt the weight of the moment settle over her. The humans hadn't just answered the signal. They had come for her. The survivors watched the sky as if expecting the heavens to split. The SOS beacon continued pulsing, its steady rhythm echoing through the cavern like a heartbeat refusing to quit. Every pair of eyes, ion-burned, exhausted, terrified, remained fixed upward. Captain Zara Hales stood at the cave mouth, armor burned to dull metal. The wind raked dust across her boots. If Kilvathi intercept the beacon, she said quietly, we need fallback positions. The ridge gives us a narrow choke. She froze mid-sentence. The wind shifted. The air vibrated. Not sound. Not resonance. Something deeper, a pressure wave pushing into the bone. Moreau stepped beside her. Is that? Zara nodded. It's a mass translation field. Human? There's only one species insane enough to punch a fleet through a gravity well this unstable. Moreau's eyes widened. Ours. Light erupted above the mountains, first a pinprick, then a spear of silver cutting through the haze. A ship burst into real space with a thunderclap that rippled across the valley. Then another. Then another. The air shimmered, reality reordering itself to squeeze in the impossible. The Deathworlder fleet had arrived. Not sleek diplomatic craft. Not cautious escorts. Warforms. Armored hulls layered with ablative plates, engines glowing like miniature suns, hull markings scorched from past battles. The lead vessel, a brute of interlinked plating and angular thruster vanes, hung directly over the valley. Zara felt her throat tighten. The Goliath dreadnought Shatterwind. Command doesn't send that unless they expect a massacre. A voice crackled over her calm, sharp and unmistakably human. Colony Bastion 7, respond. This is Admiral Rowan Hale of the 3rd Retribution Fleet. Miro's head snapped toward her. Hale? As in? My brother, Zara said. Her voice was steady, but the muscles in her jaw twitched. Open channel. The calm flickered. Rowan, it's Zara. Survivors accounted for. Hostiles are advancing, Kilvathi ground swarms, and something else. Their commander called it the Ascendant Prime. Silence. Then Rowan exhaled, low and controlled. So the rumors were true. All right. Evac starting. Hold your position until fire support lands. Zara stared at the column of shattered smoke rising beyond the ridge. We can't hold long. Then buy me minutes, Rowan replied. I'll buy you the rest. The line cut. Moreau swallowed. He sounds like you. Bad-tempered and stubborn? Focused. Which is worse? Footsteps scuffed behind them. Nokrel approached, His scaled form stiffened with awe as he looked at the descending ships. "Human fleets do not merely travel," he murmured. "They descend like judgment." Zara allowed herself a thin smile. "Good. We'll need judgment today." The storm breaks. The Kilvathi arrived first. Their swarm poured over the ridge like a living shadow, dark carapaces reflecting the dull light, limbs skittering across stone in synchronized aggression. Their shrieks sliced through the valley, a chilling chorus of anticipation. Above them strode a larger form. 8 limbs. Taller than 2 humans stacked. Armor fused directly into muscle. The Ascendant Prime. Its voice carried unnaturally far, amplified by biological resonators embedded in its throat. "Your beacon was foolish, Captain Hale." A pause. A pulse of contempt. "Now more of your kind will die." Zara raised her rifle, stance unmoving. "Funny. I was thinking the same about yours." The first drop pods slammed into the valley floor with enough force to crack stone. Armor plates peeled open, and elite infantry marched out, humans built for war, their movements crisp, weapons blazing even before the hatches fully deployed. Moreau grinned. "Reinforcements." "Deathworlders don't reinforce," Zara said. "We escalate." The air filled with kinetic fire. Shards of ionized metal streaked through the swarm, vaporizing chitin and bone. The Kilvathi ranks collapsed in violent bursts, but more surged forward, tireless and deaf to fear. The Ascendant Prime charged. Zara sprinted to intercept, boots pounding against fractured ground. The creature swung a limb as thick as a beam. She ducked, rolling beneath the blow and firing point blank. The rounds sparked against its armored plates. A backhanded strike hurled her across the dirt. Her visor cracked. Her ribs screamed. She pushed up anyway. The Prime loomed. Weak. A plasma bolt lanced from above, striking the Prime's shoulder and spinning it sideways. Zara's calm lit. "Zara!" Rowan's voice thundered. "Get clear!" The Shadowwind unleashed a broadside. A single beam. But a beam from a Deathworlder dreadnought was not a weapon, it was a declaration, a rewrite of the physical landscape. The ground vaporized in a straight line, carving a molten trench through half the swarm. Carapaces melted. Armor boiled. Even the Ascendant Prime staggered, half of its plating glowing orange. Zara rose, gasping. "Rowan, that was too close." "Precision shot," Rowan said dryly. "You're welcome." She laughed once, short and sharp. "Keep firing. I'll finish the Prime." Fury of a Deathworlder. The Prime roared and lunged. Zara braced, deflecting the first strike with her forearm guard, then firing a grappling charge directly into its exposed joint. She triggered the reel, yanking herself upward, swinging onto its back. The creature bucked violently. "Get off me, human! Not done yet!" She jammed her blade between 2 vertebrae. The Prime shrieked, limbs thrashing. She slid down its armor, slicing through conduits along its spine. Biological fluid splattered across her visor. The Prime staggered. "Admiral!" she shouted into comms. "Hit the ridge!" Rowan didn't hesitate. Firing. Another beam struck the mountain above the Prime. The rockface exploded downward, burying the massive creature beneath an avalanche of shattered stone. Silence followed. Dust drifted in slow spirals. Zara waited, breath shallow, every sense straining. A rumble sounded beneath the rubble. The Prime erupted from the debris, cracked armor hanging in pieces, one arm dragging uselessly. Its voice was ragged but venomous. "Humans cannot win." Zara raised her rifle. "We already have." A tight burst struck the exposed tissue under its jaw. The Prime collapsed, limbs twitching. Then it stilled completely. The swarm broke. Kilvathi fighters retreated in chaotic disarray, scrambling away from the overwhelming barrage of the Shadowwind's guns. Human infantry pushed forward, clearing pockets of resistance with surgical efficiency. Moreau trotted up, panting. "You killed it!" "Team effort," she said. "Still, that was impossible." Zara scanned the sky as evacuation craft descended. Deathworlders do impossible things when someone calls for help. The price of survival. Hours later, the valley lay quiet. Fires smoldered where bombardments had struck. Human medics tended to injured colonists, while soldiers secured the shattered ridge. Zara approached the command shuttle as Rowan stepped out. He looked older, lines around his eyes, fatigue buried beneath duty, but his smile was unmistakable. You always did pick the worst places to nearly die. She embraced him briefly. And you always arrived just in time. He pulled back, studying her bruised face. You held the line. Without that, we couldn't have made entry. We do what we must. Rowan nodded toward the sky. The Kilvathi will send more. But today? They learned what happens when they corner humans. And when someone sends an SOS. Rowan's expression softened. Yeah. We answer.